As fantasy football players, we're always looking for the next big thing. Try to find those young guys who are just about to explode. It was a show like this just last year that identified guys like Trey McBride, who finished as the tight end 3 overall in 2024. But who are some of those younger guys that could do that in 2025? Today we're talking about 4 guys that may have that opportunity. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Now, before we get into the names in today's show, I want to start it off with a little bit of fun. When I talk about young players who are on the verge of exploding in 2025, what name pops into your head? Leave a comment of that down below right now, and then watch the video, and let's see if we have the same thought process. Now, I'm making fantasy football videos in March, and you're watching fantasy football videos in March, which means you're probably a degenerate just like myself. Now, because I'm a fantasy football degenerate, that means I just want to win every single year. So if you want to begin the 2025 fantasy football season and absolutely just to dominate your league mates, you need to make sure you get yourself a 2025 fantasy football draft guide. Get it pre-ordered right now. Every piece of relevant information that you need to straight smack your opponents upside the head in 2025 is going to be inside this fantasy football draft guide. So head over to tfhdraftguide.com and get yours pre-ordered right now. But all right, who are my 4 young players that I'm really watching this offseason that have a chance to explode? The first name on the list is quarterback Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos. And I don't care what anyone says. If anyone out there says they expected in 2024 for it to go as good as it did for Bo Nix, they're straight lying to you. Now, sure, Bo Nix had the tools to be straight solid right off the bat. He was 24 years old. He'd had a lot of experience, but Denver didn't have a whole lot to work with. Don't forget, Jerry Jeudy was gone. Courtland Sutton, he hadn't had over 1,000 yards receiving in a season since 2019, and Marvin Mims had a whole 22 catches in his 2023 rookie season. But Bo Nix straight up said, "Hold my beer," and went out and threw for 3,775 yards and 29 touchdowns while running for another 430 yards and 4 touchdowns. He finished the season as the QB7 overall in fantasy football and carried teams in the fantasy playoffs with 3 straight games over 20 fantasy points in each one of them. Now, you hear all of that and you may think that, Jake, he's already exploded. First off, don't ever prematurely call another man's explosion. It's rude. But secondly, things are lining up for him to have a better overall offense in 2025. Marvin Mims finally found his role in the offense the last 5 weeks of 2024. Bo Nix's college teammate, Troy Franklin, he's now coming into his 2nd year. He'll have a bigger role in this offense. They just added tight end Evan Ingram from Jacksonville, and that could definitely be the week 1 binky of Bo Nix. On top of all that, we still have Courtland Sutton, who's been an absolute touchdown magnet in this offense. But they also have set themselves up to get another offensive weapon in the draft. They boosted the defense here in free agency, adding linebacker Dre Greenlaw and free safety Talanoa Hufanga from the San Francisco 49ers. Does that allow them to go with a stud running back in the 1st round? Now, while I don't think Ginty falls to them, possibly Omarion Hampton could be there for sure. So how does that really help Bo Nix though? Well, Denver's running game was horrific in 2024. If you take away the 430 yards rushing that Bo Nix himself had, Denver only ran for 1,478 yards, which would have been good enough for 2nd worst overall in the NFL. Opposing defenses didn't have to worry about the Denver running game, and Bo Nix still tore them up through the air. Give him a capable running game. Force defenders inside of the box, and that's only going to open up the field so much more for Bo Nix in this offense. So ask yourself this question. Could you see Bo Nix throwing for just 250 more yards and 4 more touchdowns in 2025 than he did in 2024? Because if you think so, that means he's on the verge of being a top 5 fantasy quarterback, and it would have put him right there with Jaden Daniels in 2024. Oh yeah. He's also the current consensus QB12 right now, so we may even get him at a discount. Now next is Tyrone Tracy, running back of the New York Giants, and let me preface this by saying a lot of this falls on the shoulders of the Giants doing the right thing. Now I know That's not really what they're known for, but we have new quarterbacks in New York. Both Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson are in town, and both those guys are a good enough bridge that could allow them to go with someone like a Travis Hunter early in the draft, maybe offensive tackle out of Missouri, Armand Membo, or edge rusher out of Penn State, Abdul Carter. But we have to realize that going to either Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, while it's not great, is way better than what they had last year in New York. Does it make him a Super Bowl contender? Absolutely not. But they could gain a great piece while still not having enough to really go out and compete, so they can tank for Arch Manning maybe in the next year or so. Regardless, the passing game is going to be much better in 2025 than what we saw in 2024. And an improved passing game is going to remove defenders from the box and really help out Tyrone Tracy. What happens if they choose to go offensive line early in the draft? That's going to be a help to Tracy as well. And we already saw last year that he showed some flashes. He didn't really have a role in this offense until week 5, yet he still finished with 1,123 total yards and 6 touchdowns. If you project his role that he had from week 5 on over a 17-game season, he would have ended with 272 touches, over 1,300 total yards, and 8 total touchdowns, while still bringing in right around 40 receptions. That right there is in the neighborhood of 200 fantasy points in half PPR scoring. It would have made him a top 20 fantasy running back. But what's important is if that offense can just slightly improve and Tracy can have the same role, he's only like 25 points away from being a top 12 running back in fantasy football. That's like an extra 175 total yards and 1 extra touchdown. Can you see Tyrone Tracy averaging 87 total yards a game while barely having to improve his touchdown percentage? I think a lot of you think those are realistic numbers. And if you think that, the dude could definitely explode in 2025, especially since right now, the consensus has him as the RB22. Now, if the Giants continue to do dumb things and they draft a running back early, this Tyrone Tracy explosion may be closer to the type you get after late night Taco Bell. Now, how about a couple pass catchers like Ladd McConkey of the LA Chargers? And I will not miss an opportunity to talk about Ladd McConkey this offseason at all. He ended last year with 82 catches, 1,149 yards, and 7 touchdowns, and finished the year as the wide receiver 12 overall in half PPR. But you could really see the second half of the season how he got so much more comfortable in this offense. He ended the season with 7 straight games of at least 80 yards receiving or a touchdown. Then he absolutely went bonkers in the playoffs against Houston, where he had almost 200 yards receiving. He has quickly become the #1 target of Justin Herbert. Now the team, they upgraded their running game. They brought in Najee Harris. They upgraded their offensive line. They brought in Mekhi Becton. Josh Palmer is now gone. He's in Buffalo, and they brought back Mike Williams. There is literally nothing standing in the way of Ladd McConkey when it comes to having a large role in this offense once again. The offense isn't going to change much this year compared to last year. Now, Ladd may not be one of those guys that racks up a ton of 100-yard games, but he may be one of the safest wide receivers in fantasy football in 2025. If you take what he did the last 7 games of the season and projected it over 17 games, it would be over 100 receptions, 1,598 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That would have been 264 fantasy points and would have been only 2 points less than last year's wide receiver 2, Justin Jefferson. Now, maybe those numbers are a little high. Yeah, they're probably a little bit high. But here's what's great. He could get 20 less receptions, 140 less yards, and 1 less touchdown than that projection and still be in the top 5 wide receiver talk. He had a great rookie year, but we haven't seen the ceiling yet. And now that he comes into the year with a larger role and the chemistry with Justin Herbert to start the season, Ladd McConkey could absolutely explode. And I really feel like the next guy could as well. Ricky Pearsall of the San Francisco 49ers. There were some high expectations for Ricky Pearsall coming out of the NFL draft since San Francisco took him at the end of the first round. Then he got shot and had an uphill battle coming into the season and didn't even play until week 7. But we saw him flash at times in 2024. He only needs opportunities. So now we enter 2025 and Deebo Samuel is gone. He's in Washington. Brandon Ayuk, he's coming off a torn ACL and MCL and didn't even look great pre-injury in 2024. If you're the San Francisco 49ers, you do not trade Deebo Samuel with Ayuk coming off a major injury unless you have total confidence in the other guys on your roster. And we saw what Ricky Pearsall could do when he got a chance the end of last season. Over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games of 2024. Now he comes into this season fully healthy. He knows the offense. We know him and Brock Purdy already have great chemistry, and he is going to have a much larger role starting in week 1. Now, the consensus is just plain ignoring him at this point. They have him as the wide receiver 48. The wide receiver 48 last year was DeAndre Hopkins, and he only had 2 good games in 2024. He ended the year with 610 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. Pearsall, he had 445 total yards and 3 touchdowns and barely played last season. San Francisco has been top 5 in the NFL in passing yards for multiple years, and now Pearsall comes in as basically the team's de facto wide receiver 1. He could easily be a 1,000-yard receiver this year and up inside the top 20 wide receivers in fantasy football, and compare that to where he's going to be drafted, dude could just explode all over his ADP in 2025. All right, so there you have 4 young players that I'm taking a look at this offseason because I believe they have a chance to absolutely explode in 2025. Were any of these names on your list? The names that you wrote down before the show, did we match any of those names? You know we really like to involve the community over there, so I'm going to be sure to be active in the comment section, so leave me a comment. I'll do my best to reply to each and every one of them. Now, if you enjoyed today's show, do me a favor, hit the like button if you haven't already, and then consider subscribing if you're not already a subscriber to Headliner Nation, because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You hit the subscribe button for free, you're going to damn dominate in 2025. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here for the day. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day, and then most importantly, do your part to make the world a better place.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game.